My name is John David Wells. This is the radio broadcast you've been hearing about, hopefully, where we give you the news. We give you the real news. We do. We give you news. We analyze the news for fact. We make commentary. That's the toughest part of the show. Not because making commentary is a big deal for me. That's not really an issue. The issue is that, you're looking for news. And there are enough people out there telling you what they think and they believe their stuff should be news. And you know what? It isn't. And what I keep trying to do is I keep trying to put news out there. And yes, I make commentary, and that's just my opinion. It is not the news. The news is what's been happening, and it's stuff that you need to be able to pay attention to so you can make whatever decisions you want to make about that news when you have a moment to do so. Like, for example, in a ballot booth, in a voting booth. And that's what we're trying to get done here on the Wells Report. And I thank you very much for being with us today. Anatoly Rydenkov is joining us. How's it going, man? Thank you very much for being here, Anatoly. I appreciate it. It's always good. He was a brother of mine in the Texas State Guard, but moved on to bigger and better things, although I don't know how. I don't know how he could find bigger and better anything than in Texas. However, I suppose you can if you keep looking. And I'll have to get a report on that. So, Anatoly, you're going to have to let me know about that when you get a moment. David Keith has joined us as well. And where are they joining us, you might ask? Where are they joining us? Well, they're joining us on the chat. You see, we have several live streams going now. We've got one on YouTube, we've got one on Facebook, we've got one on Twitch, and we've got one on Twitter. And so you can join us on the chat room, and you are welcome to do so. So please, by all means, do. Today, we got some amazing news. When I say amazing, I'm not exactly sure I mean it in a positive sense. Actually, I'm sure I don't mean it in a positive sense because it's not positive. This was shocking to me. I expect an incremental jump in inflation. What I got was a ridiculous jump in inflation, a half a point if my memory serves. Inflation jumped again in June on a persistent climb in gas, food, and rent. It notched yet another 40-year high and likely solidifies the Federal Reserve's plans to come up with another big rate hike this month. It's not just going to be this month. It's going to be for the next several months. And you need to be aware. And when we talk about this, we're talking about 75 percentage points. That's 0.75 or 3/4 of a point in the prime interest rate. Prices increased 9.1% year over year. 9.1%. Now, remember, I was talking about inflation, and I told you that there was absolutely no way that we were going to see anything besides inflation at, say, for example, over double digits. There's no way we're going to avoid double-digit inflation. Just absolutely none. And we're also not going to be able to avoid a recession. As a matter of fact, by raising interest rates, the Fed is guaranteeing a recession. And it's going to last a while. This is something that's going to require a dramatic change, a change that the American left and essentially Joe Biden, who is powered by the American left, or at least caters to the American left so much that I'm trying to figure out who he's working for, to be perfectly honest with you. Anyway, so what's going on is he is catering to the left at a level resembling art, and he needs to stop it. And I don't know that he can. And moreover, I don't know that he will. And so that being said, well, what is there to do? Well, you need to remember all of this when we get to the voting booth that I was just referring to. Get to the voting booth and make some change. Stop electing politicians. Start electing your neighbors. And yes, the political machine is out there, and the political machine is going to trash your neighbors. They're just absolutely going to trash your neighbors. But you've got to ignore that. You absolutely do. Because no one could do worse with our government at this particular moment than the people that are currently running it? No one. It's just not possible. And that being the case, you are then in a position where you're saying, well, we might as well get people that are going up there not to aggrandize themselves, not to create a political workers' paradise, but for people that are interested in doing your business as your representatives. And that's what we have to do. If you want to know what to do about inflation, aside from saving money at every possible turn, then vote smarter. And that's what this show's all about. So 9.1% interest rate year to year. The Labor Department's Consumer Price Index showed this Wednesday, economists surveyed by Bloomberg had an estimated inflation would rise to 8.8%. Bloomberg, obviously understating the realities. They do so because it's a leftist situation. And Michael Bloomberg is a leftist. Not only that, he's a billionaire leftist. And so they're going to do whatever they can to soft pedal whatever news they can. So Bloomberg is not credible. So on a monthly basis, consumer prices increased 1.3%, the largest leap since 2005. In case you were wondering, in May, prices jumped 1%. Ian Steffordson, who is Shepherdson, he's the chief economist of Pantheon Macroeconomics, said, ouch. In a word, ouch. Amid signs that inflation is poised to gradually increase, now hang on a second, that's not what he said. Amid signs that inflation is poised to gradually ease, he, along with other economists, noted June likely marked its peak, though a similar proved premature. The report bolstered the Federal Reserve's plan to raise its key interest rate by a hefty 0.75 of a percentage point for the second straight month as a part of an aggressive campaign to curtail inflation. And how do you curtail inflation? You slow the economy down. What happens when you slow the economy down? Well, you put it into a recession on purpose. And so things are going to be tight for a while, which is going to exacerbate things slowing back down. You don't have as much money to go out and eat, for example, go out to the movies, for example, go out to a baseball game, go do this, go do that. You don't have the money. I mean, there's eye-watering information that I'm about to share with you on this. That is, I mean, how much is it costing you? Over $3,500 a year. That's the average American. The average American is losing $3,500 a year. And of course, then you get into, okay, well, let's follow the money. Well, let's follow the money. What happens when interest rates increase, when prices increase, when inflation increases? It costs more dollars for you to do the same things. You have to spend more money on groceries, more money on gas, more money on everything. Electricity, natural gas. You've got so much more money to spend. You don't have it to spend, but you have to spend more money. So what happens is those prices increase. What else happens? The percentage collected by the government increases. Remember when President Biden talked about the fact that he would never raise taxes on the middle class? The middle class, historically comprised of the most number of people. They are the only ones that have money enough to propel these political deliria, this delirium of, say, for example, green energy and all that kind of stuff. We're not ready. We're not ready to make that kind of change. We're simply not. And they knew it. But what they had to do is they had to figure out some way of getting more money because they had spent trillions. Numbers so big, you cannot fathom how much money that is. You just can't. You just can't. And so they had to figure out a way to get that done. And let me tell you, they didn't handle it well. And so, where does that go? Well, the only thing I can tell you is it doesn't go anyplace great. It just doesn't go anyplace great. The development disappointed already dour investors. After the latest figures were released, the Dow Jones Industrial Average sank about 300 points, which is minuscule. The S&P fell by 37 points, or roughly 1%. Yields on 10-year notes popped. In mid-morning trading, they hovered at 3.03%. So in other words, all the things that come with a bear market and a recession are beginning. June's surge again was led by gasoline prices, which increased 11.2% from the prior month, 59.9% annually. Gasoline's up 60%. Unbelievable. The good news is that unleaded regular averaged $4.65, down from just $5 a month ago. It is absolutely insane. Grocery prices rose by 1%. And let's see, 12.12, that's 12.2% over the past 12 months. Both gas and food costs have been elevated largely because of Russia's war in Ukraine. That has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with it. The reason that food prices are going up is because trucks take them to stores. They're paying $5.50 per gallon of diesel. That's the last time I checked. It might be higher than it is right now. This is something that cannot be blamed on a relatively small war across the world. And so what do? Well, like I said, like I keep telling you, what you do is you go out there and you work your way through the situation where you just make better votes. You just have to. You got to make better votes, and if you don't, you're going to be sorry. I'm serious. This is the Wells Report. I thank you very much for being a part of our show. We can expect your call maybe today at area code 817-379-2172. That's 817-379-2172. Inflation, 9.1% up year to year. It's costing you over $3,500 a month. A year. That's $3,500 less than you had to spend last year. It's outrageous. You are listening to the Wells Report. Thanks very much for being a part of the broadcast. So join us again, 817-373. What did I say that? 279-2172. Don't ask me why I said 373. Back in a minute. Hey, and welcome back to the Wells Report. We've got a little bit of an extra minute here. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to go through some of the chat room things that we've got in the next 40 seconds or so. David Keith says, howdy from the warm woods of Northeast Texas. Let me tell you something. Everything in Texas is boiling hot. Randy Kecklin from Seattle. How's it going, brother? I appreciate your time here today. Chris Sutton, my nephew. Hello from Memphis. You take care of yourself down there, brother. Let's see. Elizabeth Ann says, Obama and China in control. Obama, Valerie Jarrett, Susan Rice, among others, are pulling Biden strings. Ouch, doesn't cut it. Yeah, there are a bunch of other four-letter words that covers it. Can hardly afford chicken breasts anymore. Used to be cheap. People around me sure are out while I sit and watch. Okay, Elizabeth. Glad to have you back, by the way. It's good to see you. Hang on a second. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us today. We sincerely appreciate it. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172, no matter what I keep saying. Actually, that's the wrong number, too. No, it isn't. That is the correct number. See, I made a mistake because I thought I made a mistake. I made a mistake because I made a mistake. And then I didn't make the mistake. So actually, I made a mistake because I didn't make a mistake because I thought I made a mistake. Let's get after it. So like I said, 40-year high. You just heard USA Today's copy on this. And obviously, we're going to spend some time talking about it because we simply have to. There are other circumstances that we need to take care of. And that is, say, for example, I don't know, U.S. inflation. This is from CNN. U.S. inflation hits a 40-year high in June, driven by record gas prices, it says. Let's see. It's their inflation sticker price shock. Gasoline up 59.9%, food up 10.4%, shelter up 5.6%. Inflation surged to a new pandemic era peak in June. It's not a pandemic era. See, this is the analysis for fact that I talk about. You know, we report the news and then we analyze for fact and then we make comment and then we debate because my commentary is my commentary. You've got yours, I've got mine. Let's compare. So they're saying that inflation surged to a new pandemic era peak in June. This is a 4-decade-long peak. We just set high inflation records for the last 40 years. That's amazing. Just do whatever you possibly can to minimize the damage of this incredibly damaging news ever. It's unbelievable. In the second paragraph, they say that's the highest level in more than 40 years and higher than the previous reading, when prices rose 8.6% for the year ending in May. It's also much higher than the 8.8% that economists had predicted. This, according to Refinitiv. Those people are amazing. So this is according to data released today. The Consumer Price Index for June also showed that overall prices that consumers pay for a variety of goods and services rose 1.3% from May until June. Much of the June increase was driven by a jump in gasoline prices, which were up nearly 60% over the year. Americans faced record high gas prices last month, the national average topping $5 a gallon across the country. Electricity, natural gas prices also rose by 13.7%. Oh, my. Oh, by the way, electricity was 13.7%, natural gas up 38.4%. That's for the 12-month period ending in June. Overall energy prices have risen by 41.6% year over year. That's a little low, by the way. The increases, however, were felt across all categories. Prices for food at home are up 12.2% over the year. Eggs up 33.1%. Butter up 21.3%. Milk up 16.4%. Chicken up 18.6%. Coffee up 15.8%. Shelter costs 5.6%. President Joe Biden said Wednesday the June CPI inflation reading was unacceptably high, but noted it's also out of date. He's telling him this because gas prices have lowered in the last 30 days. Gasoline and crude oil prices are now below $100 per barrel. That won't stay that way very long. It won't stay that way very long. And you know what's causing that lowering in prices? People aren't buying as much. Inventory is going up. People aren't spending that much on gas anymore. That's what's lowering the prices, not anything that the government has done. And you know what fascinates me? When somebody says, tell me about this inflation, the answer from the administration is, we have a plan. What is it? We have a plan that will make all of this fine. What's your plan? We have a plan. So when you're in a voting booth coming up here in about 100 days or so, you should have a plan too. This is the Wells Report. And a pleasant greetings. Welcome to the Wells Report. I am John David Wells, and I want to thank you very much for being a part of this broadcast. Mighty nice of you to be here. I do appreciate it. So, where are we and what are we up to? And I'm glad you're asking, because this is a tough situation here. It absolutely is. Inflation is real high. What are people saying about it? Well, T. Rooney says my 18-year-old who just graduated high school is making $12 an hour. Those people that got this wonderful, got this fantastic minimum wage price hike, all that money's gone. All that money is gone by a long shot. And some. And so all those people that said, what we really need to do is we really need to raise the minimum wage. That's another huge group of workers in America. People making minimum wage. All right. So when you raise minimum wage, that puts more money into the economy. The economy expands to grab it. Grab it. That's what happens. It's simple economics. It's so simple, I can figure it out. That's mighty simple. I'm just saying. Mighty dang simple. Now listen to this. I'm sorry I misspoke. I said that this is costing you over $3,400. I'm sorry, over $3,500. It's not. It's $3,400 in annual income. I misread it. And please forgive me for that, but that's the way that works sometimes. And so what happens is that I got that wrong. The average U.S. worker from Fox Business, the average U.S. worker lost $3,400 in annual income because of skyrocketing inflation since President Biden took office nearly 18 months ago. In the next couple of months, it'll be over $3,500. Overall, the Consumer Price Index, a key inflation measurement, surged 9.1% year over year, more than expected. That marked its highest level since November of 1981. 1981. Let's see, who was the president then? Oh, yeah. Ronald Reagan had just taken office. This is according to a Bureau of Labor Statistics report today. The decline amounts to roughly $3,400 in yearly income for the average worker and a $6,800 reduction for families in which both parents work. This according to E.J. Antoni, a research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. By the way, the Heritage Foundation is biased right. So once again, keep that in mind. There are plenty of families that's more than their food budget every year. Man, this according to Antoni. I can't emphasize enough how much this is really crushing consumers. It's truly crushing the middle class. And then the White House spokesperson says these garbage lines like the economy's in a transition. A transition to what? The economy is in a transition to a political endeavor whose reality doesn't exist. What we're going to do is we're going to stop the so-called fossil fuels. We're going to stop it. We're going to get away from fossil fuels, except there's no infrastructure to catch us on the other side of it. And that's why there's a problem here. It's a transition. Yeah, maybe that's how he goes on and says something snarky. Okay. Transition in the same sense, I suppose, that an iceberg transitioned the Titanic into a submarine. Ow. The report showed that energy prices, including gasoline and electricity, have skyrocketed 41.6% year over year. I said, diesel was somewhere in the $5.50 range. No, Elizabeth Ann says, no, diesel is about $6 a gallon. T. Rooney also points out that formula shortages, that hasn't gone anywhere yet. Supply chain issues, how in hell does this happen in the USA? Real simple. Real simple. I can explain it. The supply chain issue is easy to explain. Because of COVID-19, we couldn't allow all those ships to offload. There are hundreds of them out to the west in the Pacific, to the west of all of those California ports. What does that do? Well, that lessens supply. The laws of supply and demand says that when there's lower supply, demand artificially goes up, but prices go up to cover it. Because suddenly you just don't have as many widgets from wherever. And so let's see. David Keith says, I saw gas for $3.91 a gallon in Texarkana. Boy, I tell you what, if it wasn't so far, I'd go to Texarkana and fill up my tank. But then again, I'd have to fill my tank up when I got back. Well, not quite, but you get this. You get the idea. Let's see. Let's see what else do we have here. Let's see. Albertsons meat bargain tray used to be meats for 50% off. Now it's just 50 cents off. My father used to say that he was never wrong except for the one time that he thought he was wrong, except he wasn't. Yeah, I've done that too. I just did that today, or as a matter of fact. Yeah, let's see what else. Mike Renwee, okay. Between the high gas prices, food prices, and a lot of younger workers here in the office are having really tight budgets, especially those that moved to Allen and other northern counties so they could afford to buy a house at all. That's true. By the way, Randy Kecklin from Seattle says these numbers are much higher than 9.1%. Well, that's because you're living in Seattle. And remember, these are average numbers across the country. Just going grocery shopping on a weekly basis is depressing enough. Last week it was $10. This week $13 per item. Yeah, says Mike Renwee. I would say prices are creeping up, but they're not creeping up. They called this explosive inflation, by the way. Put the government in charge of a desert. Soon there will be a shortage of sand. That's not my original quote, but so true. Government, politicians, and HOAs are the kids we picked on in school. Good point. Let's see. One of our bosses just explained that the market for certain positions is overpaying now because of the demand, but he said that will even out in the next 12 to 24 months. You can't raise existing employees up to the current market. It's not fair for them to bring in a new hire for more than existing employees are making. Yeah, the prodigal son inflation. Yeah. It's a war on fossil fuel they cannot win. Be patient. Well, no. There are quadrillions of dollars. That's 1,000 trillions. There are quadrillions of dollars worth of energy just in the United States alone. Nobody's walking away from it. Nobody. Let's see. Gary Abshire says, time to invade and occupy the West Coast, get those ships into port and get those trucks going again. Yeah. Chris Sutton, my nephew, says, and Biden doesn't acknowledge that 2/3 of Democrats don't want him to run again. We'll be talking about that in the next hour of the Wells Report. That is exactly what we'll be doing. This is awful. It is truly, truly awful. What we are seeing now is food and energy costs finally being passed on to other businesses and ultimately to consumers. That's right. They're being borne out of the core prices. Republican lawmakers slammed Biden for the following the report, for the president's agenda, which they blamed for high consumer prices. They are correct. Joe Biden found an economy, even after COVID-19, immeasurably in better shape than it is now. Immeasurably. Let's see what else. Who else is saying something? Patrick McHenry, the consumer price index reached 9.1% in June, which was even higher than expected. Inflation has now reached the highest rate in 41 years. How much more must Americans suffer at the expense of President Biden's reckless and dangerous politics? 1 year ago this week, President Biden's reckless stimulus checks began flooding the economy, and we are seeing the result. Inflation is raging and getting worse, forcing massive pay cuts for American families. This, according to House Ways and Means Committee ranking member Kevin Brady. Now, remember, he's a Republican, and there's a little bit of hyperbole there. According to Antoni's calculation, inflation effectively erased the money Americans received from federal stimulus checks. Federal government sent 3 stimulus payments worth $1,200, $600, and $1,400 respectively between March 2020 and March 2021. All that's been soaked up in inflation. Kind of a handy way to get the money back that you spent, huh? Pretty soon there's going to be a press release coming from the Democrat Party that says, oh, don't worry about any of this. The stimulus checks cost Americans nothing. Yeah, that's not anywhere close to costing nothing. What does that happen? What is happening there? That is not correct. That is the wrong time. It is the wrong time. And I don't know why all my timing is off, but my timing is off. So what we'll do is we'll work this out and we'll get this all back on time here in just a couple of seconds. So anyway, What I'm trying to tell you is that inflation is out of control. That economists, that American workers are being crushed by it. Crushed by it. And then there's this. I was talking about the apologist media, right? I was talking about the apologist media moments ago. This is the absolute worst case of apologist media that I've ever seen. Hannah Panrek of Fox News reports that Washington Post columnist Perry Bacon Jr. suggested that President Biden wouldn't be as unpopular among Democrats if it wasn't for inflation, adding that estimates would indicate that half of the president's negative approval rating is caused by it. Then Mr. Bacon wrote that after speaking to pollsters and other policy experts, the strong consensus is that if inflation were at normal levels and not constantly in the news, President Biden's approval rating would probably be between 41 and 45%, with his disapproval number between 51 and 54%. Okay, that's all well and good, but that's still underwater. So what are you saying? What are you saying, Perry Bacon Jr. of the Washington Post? You saying that that negative press is hurting President Biden? Is that what you're saying? Are you saying that negative press is hurting President Biden? Now, that's obviously true. Negative press is hurting President Biden. But while we're on the subject of negative press, let's talk a little bit about the 95% negative reporting that happened during the Trump administration. The Trump administration didn't have any problem whatsoever with the economy, even through the pandemic, in comparison to where we are now. So, Mr. President Biden, congratulations. Your mainstream media, your stenography service, your political machine press is now forced to absolutely do two things. One, they are forced to tell the truth by virtue of numbers that they can't hide from. And two, now you've got leftist progressive columnists saying, this would be a lot better if that dang media wouldn't keep reporting inflation. You know what? I bet you that Mikhail Gorbachev would still be in power if it wasn't for the fact that that dang negative press about the Chernobyl meltdown really ruined his time at the top. Unbelievable. Yeah, stimulus checks were a bad idea anytime. It's true. That's why the government, that's why we had problems in the 30s coming out of the Great Depression. The government felt like they had to do something. And so FDR created all of these jobs out of thin air and put people to work and started throwing money into the economy. Okay? There would have been a bigger ruination had the Second World War not intervened. There's some other things. Chris Sutton said our utility company sent out a memo letting us know that our energy bills would be going up $20 to $60 per month with no specific reason given. Well, that's because they're having to pay more for fuel to run those power generation plants. Remember back in the old days, you'd go past a power generation plant, you see the big smokestacks and smoke coming out of them because they were burning coal. And so everybody said, my God, we've got acid rain and we've got this and we've got that and so on and so forth, and we have to do that. So utility companies spent billions of dollars updating their coal-burning power plants to be able to stop putting out all that terrible smoke, which, by the way, was terrible. And then what ended up happening is after they spent all that money, then suddenly it's really carbon dioxide that's the problem, a gas that represents 0.06% of our atmosphere, for crying out loud. 0.06%. Jeez. And so now what we have is we have CO2, and we've got to get away from fossil fuels to get rid of the CO2, or we're going to turn into Venus. It's a planet just like Earth, except it's hundreds of millions of miles closer to the sun. Hello. Huh. Man, it's like these people just don't think about this. So these power plants turning to natural gas, which only puts out CO2. So now they're saying you can't run those either. You got to use solar power. There's not enough solar energy hitting the earth to power it. Not anywhere close. And once again, the political imperative trying to supplant reality. The political imperative attempting to supplant reality. This is truly awful. Truly awful. And so what comes next? I'll tell you what comes next. What we have to do is we have to make better decisions at the ballot box. And what we also have to do is we also have to understand that we're being played. This is all calculated. This is an effort to create a situation where there is more money available to the politicos. More money for the politicos. And we are paying that money through inflation. Oh, yeah, President Biden said, no, don't worry about any of this stuff. My goodness gracious, I'll never raise taxes on the middle class. Oh, really? You'll never raise interest. You'll never raise taxes on the middle class. That's what inflation is. You're listening to The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being a part of our radio broadcast. We're going to be back here in just a couple of minutes. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back. And we'll have more to say about a very big news day next on The Wells Report. You are listening to The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I know you love talking about inflation. But there's only one thing that I know that you love talking about more than inflation. What is that, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. COVID-19. Yeah. Nearly 2.5 years since the coronavirus pandemic began, writes CNN, the most infectious and transmissible variant yet has arrived in the United States. That's right. Repeated COVID-19 waves have left millions of people around the world dead, with only vaccines helping to blunt the toll. Remember that phrase. Now the virus is spreading again, evolving, escaping immunity, and driving an uptick in cases and hospitalizations. The latest version of its shape-shifting BA.5 is a clear sign the pandemic is far from over. The newest offshoot of Omicron, along with a closely related variant, BA.4, are fueling a global surge in cases, 30% over the past fortnight. Well, you see, it's a fortnight. Most of us say 2 weeks, but we've got fortnights at CNN. Yeah. This according to the World Health Organization. All right, so there's that, right? So then CNN moves on through their health tab that says the much-awaited summer lull in coronavirus doesn't appear to be happening. COVID-19 infections continue to increase in much of the U.S. An early rise this year was driven by the BA.2 Omicron subvariant. Now, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention report that two other subvariants, BA.4 and BA.5. I'm sorry, Omicron, BA.4, BA.5. Do these sound like cast members in a Star Wars movie? Just asking. By the way, the new infections of the country are at least 70% of them are because of BA.4 and BA.5. These subvariants may partially escape the immunity protection that you got with your vaccine, and by prior infection, though vaccination is still likely will protect against severe illness. Yeah, once again, remember that too. So, what do we have? Well, medical analyst Dr. Leanna Wen, an emergency physician and professor of health policy at management of the George Washington University, the Milken Institute of Public Health. She says, here's what you need to do. How should people think about their COVID-19 risk? I don't think that people should have to change their daily activities, but I do think that people need to be aware of risking contracting COVID-19 if they don't take additional precautions. What are those precautions? For individuals who want to prioritize reducing their risk of COVID-19, I'd advise first that they follow the CDC guide. We're not listening to experts, are we? Why aren't we listening to experts? Well, I'll tell you why we're not listening to experts. Because Anthony Fauci said this. One of the things that's clear from the data is that even though vaccines, because of the high degree of transmissibility of this virus, don't protect overly well. What? They don't protect overly well? Why in heaven's name were you stomping on people who refused to take the vaccine then? They don't protect overly well. No kidding. They don't protect you against infection. They protect quite well against severe disease leading to hospitalization and death. Well, I had 3 shots, and what I ended up doing was after my 3 shots, I got COVID-19. So I've had 3 shots and the natural version of this disease. And I'm sitting here going, okay. By the way, U.S. health officials are urgently working on a plan to allow a second COVID-19 booster. Another shot that will likely be valueless. Before they put that second booster out there, you know what they need to do? They need to make sure that this is not, and I repeat, not an experimental emergency use. They need to go ahead. They've got all the data that they need to go ahead and extend. The FDA has all the data they need to extend full approval of all of these suckers, and they should, by God, do it. Don't you think? Yeah, they should do it. They should be forced to do it. By the way, all of this being said, Fauci, I guess, said the quiet part out loud. These things don't work overly well. There are guys that I was serving with down on the border that have been discharged from the service because they wouldn't take these vaccines. And now they don't work overly well. The vaccines don't. I guarantee you that all those people that are now no longer in the armed forces, or at least waiting out a suspension of some kind, they worked overly well. Hard charging, wonderful people. Hard charging, incredible people that the military has lost because of the political meanderings of this COVID-19 mess. It's absolutely horrific. So those people that believe that Obamacare was such a great idea, how do you like government health care? How do you like government health care now? And yes, I know Operation Warp Speed came through the Trump administration. That's fine. It's still the government. When we bypass all the things necessary because of political considerations, and we absolutely had to ruin the economy, so we absolutely had a case in the 2020 elections, the 2020 elections to diselect President Trump. Look at what the politicians have done to be able to move their political agenda forward. Look at what they've done. Vote differently. Please vote differently. Begin this November. Back in a moment. Welcome back to the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. What is the Wells Report? I am so glad that you asked that question. The Wells Report is a digest of news. It is a digest of news that indeed gives you an idea of what's going on around you. And why do we do this? We do this because you need real information, something you do not have. Because you probably, like most people, listen to the mainstream media. Actually, you don't. That's why you're here. You are here because the Wells Report brings you news, real news, brings you the issues of the day. We take the news and we analyze it for fact. And there's just not enough fact in the news these days, and you know it. And so what we do is we take the news, we analyze it for fact, and then what we do is we then make commentary. Now that's the opinion part. And that opinion part is the riskiest part of the show for me because once again, I'm not trying to make my opinion news. But there are so many people that do. It's pretty awful. It's pretty bad. And so we don't do that here. We do real news reporting and we do real opinion, but it is not the opinion that matters. It's the news. Now, my opinion is just as valuable as yours, and by all means do share that. You can call us at 817-379-2172. That's 817-379-2172. You can do that. And as a matter of fact, we really wish that you would. And so that being said, make sure that you do the check and balance on my commentary. Offer what you wish. You can also do it with chat. We are available on Facebook. We're available on Twitter. We're available on Twitch. And we're also available on YouTube. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, so far. There will be others. There are other places. Hang on a second while I fix something here. I asked my computer to do too much, although I have been working really, really hard at making it better. This is frustrating. It's just as frustrating for me as it is for you, I promise. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just getting rid of that. And I'm getting rid of that too. All right. So anyway, let's just move on here. This has been a very bad day for Joe Biden. It's been a bad week. It's been bad. And it's been bad because he's not in command. And he's not in command for very important reasons. Because the left, after co-opting virtually all of the executive branch agencies during the Obama years, just don't want they just don't want to give up power, which is funny because, of course, Donald Trump is in a position where he is being just caustically hammered by the January 6th committee for not wanting to give up power. Well, the same people that ran the Obama administration are now running the Biden administration. That's my opinion. That's my guess. I'm not sure that's true. But there are an awful lot of people that do believe it's true. And so what ended up happening was the president became agitated, approached a reporter after he was asked for his response to recent polling that show a majority of Democrats do not want him to seek re-election in 2024. The reporter, unnamed, at a congressional picnic at the White House, asked this, quote, "Mr. President, what's your message to Democrats who don't want you to run again?" Unquote. And then President Biden, walking adjacent to the reporter, paused in his tracks and told the reporter, quote, "They want me to run," and for him to read the polls. The reporter then noted that roughly 2/3 of Democrats say they do not want President Biden to run again, according to a New York Times survey. And then the president snapped, "Read the polls, Jack. You guys are all the same." That poll showed that 92% of Democrats, if I ran, would vote for me. No, they wouldn't, Mr. President. No, they wouldn't. Both the reporter and President Biden reiterated their claims to each other, with the reporter again asserting a majority of Democrats do not want President Biden to campaign in 2024, with President Biden refuting the statistics, insisting it was quite the opposite. Now, please know what I've said about polling. It is not accurate. It is politically driven. The mainstream media has become the machine press for the political machine. That's what they've become. And all of it is biased. Fox News is biased. Sometimes the other direction, sometimes the same direction. So you have to keep something in mind. These are polls that they're talking about. The only poll that matters will happen in November, the first Tuesday of November in 2022. Just a few months away. Not long. Not long. The interaction comes as the media has highlighted numerous polls that show President Biden is in hot water with American voters. And why wouldn't they be? Inflation up 9.1% year to year. That includes voters of his own party. The numbers President Biden and the reporter spoke of came from a New York Times Siena College poll conducted between July 5th and 7th. In this particular situation, the reporter was in fact correct in his assessment that a majority, or around two-thirds of Democrats, do not want President Biden to seek the presidency again in 2 years. The poll revealed a staggering 64% of Democrat voters agree someone else should take the mantle in 2022. As for the president's statistic of 92%, that number does appear in the poll, but it is not attributable to a question about whether or not he should run in 2024. That statistic is in reference to the fact that 92% of Democrats would still vote for Biden in a hypothetical rematch against former President Donald Trump. And once again, I'm not sure that's real either. The poll also highlighted a number of other notable insights into the national mood regarding President Biden and his administration. The polling shows particular frustration among young voters, showing that 94% of Democrats under the age of 30 would prefer a different nominee. The poll also found that just 13% of Americans believe the country is on the right track. In the 80th percentile, people in the United States believe this country is on the wrong track. It's horrendous. It is absolutely horrendous. Let's see. Let me tell you how horrendous it is. According to Fox News, okay, more Americans say they're opposed to President Joe Biden running again in 2024 than are opposed to former President Donald Trump doing the same. This comes from a Tuesday morning poll from Politico and Morning Consult. The non-probability poll, conducted from July 8th through the 10th, surveyed 2,005 U.S. adults, has a 2% margin of error. The poll cased workers with separate questions about whether they believe that Biden and Trump should run for re-election in 2024, while a majority of Americans opposed both candidates. A larger majority said that Biden should bow out. 61% of the respondents said that they were opposed to a Trump candidacy. 48% said Trump should definitely not run in the next election. 13% said he should probably not run. Meanwhile, 64% of respondents said that President Biden should stay out of the race. 46% said he should definitely not run. 18% said he should probably not run. Nevertheless, President Biden has stated unequivocally he plans to run for re-election. Here's the reason. He does not want to be a lame duck president. He does not want to, he's not even halfway through his presidency. He does not want to be a lame duck for the last 2 years. The poll comes as President Biden's approval rating continues to tank into the 30s, due in large part to skyrocketing gas prices and inflation. President Biden's approval rating sat at 33% according to a Monday poll from the New York Times. The Tuesday poll from Politico had Trump's favorability rating at 42%. 42% to 33%. Whoa. Whoa. So there's that. And then there's something else. And I really don't know what to make of this. This was I'm just trying to figure out what President Obama is doing. So the former White House physician, Ronnie Jackson, who was the doctor for 3 presidents, has written a book about his experiences serving America. And what has happened with that book is that it created an angry response from President Obama. He sent an email direct to the former physician for the White House and congressional candidate and said that it was incredibly professional. Incredibly unprofessional that he would share that information. This is the same doctor that gave Donald Trump a cognitive test that said he aced it. And now says that President Biden should undergo that same testing. They're not going to let him get within 1,000 miles of that kind of testing. They can't. Dr. Jackson also said that he didn't believe that Joe Biden would be able to complete a 4-year term, let alone an 8-year term. And it looks as though he was right about that too. Well, President Obama sent this email and said, it was unprofessional that you would share that information. Well, that is, again, a situation where the horse has already left the barn. A little bit late to shut the gate. Because whatever information that could have been released regarding Donald Trump's ability to walk down a ramp, for example, that was national news for 3 days. And so when President Biden stumbles 3 times in a row going up the stairs to Air Force One, nothing. When he shuffles around because he's got serious, serious problems, nothing. And at least this guy said, hey, this is a serious issue, because it's a serious issue. Nonstop gaffes. Nonstop gaffes on the part of this president. So there we are. This is what we have to deal with. So the left doing everything they can, including castigating a guy who was there, a politician yapping at a doctor for his, granted, his diagnosis in a political book. Has Dr. Jackson ever examined Joe Biden? No. Is there a chance that Dr. Jackson ever would? No. So is he talking through his hat at some level? Yes. Yes. But President Obama wouldn't endorse Joe Biden at the beginning until he had already gotten the nomination. This is beyond sad. This is The Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. There are some things that we wanted to talk about. We mentioned the fact that President Biden is working very, very hard to make sure that everybody knows he's running again because he doesn't want to be a lame duck for 2 years. That actually makes political sense. By the way, in case you're wondering, Yvonne Field also brought up the fact that if Trump were to run again, he would start his next term as a lame duck. Is that a good idea? She brings up the idea that maybe we should be looking at Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Isaac Tate got it wrong again when he said that Trump said he aced the test, not Dr. Jackson. The only problem with that is that Dr. Jackson just put it in a book. You need to update your information. Allen says it wasn't a cognitive test. The test that Dr. Jackson gave Trump is a test used to assess early dementia. That is a cognitive test, Allen. Once again, blinded by politics. So let's see. What else? Okay, here we go. Let's keep rolling. Just wanted to bring that up. A Columbus man has been charged with impregnating a 10-year-old girl who then traveled to Indiana for an abortion. This led to international attention following the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, an activation of Ohio's abortion law, which I'm sure does not cover a 10-year-old who is pregnant. Gershon Fuentes, 27 years of age, whose last known address was an apartment on Columbus's northwest side, was arrested yesterday after police say he confessed to raping the child on at least 2 occasions. He's been charged with rape, a felony of the first degree in Ohio. What about pedophilia? Columbus police were made aware of the child's pregnancy through a referral by Franklin County Children's Services that was made by her mother on June 22nd. June 22nd. This according to Detective Jeffrey Hune. On June 30th, the girl underwent her abortion in Indianapolis. Hune also testified that DNA from the clinic in Indianapolis is being tested against samples from Fuentes as well as the children's siblings to confirm contribution to the aborted fetus. By the way, in case you're wondering, let me just keep rolling here. A high bond was necessary. That Franklin County Municipal Court Judge Cynthia Ebner said the case did not warrant Fuentes, who is believed to be undocumented, to be held without bond. He might be undocumented? Where'd this guy come from? How do they not know after they've arraigned him in court whether or not he's undocumented? This, by the way, is USA Today copy, in case you're wondering where the bias is and where the confusion is. It's purposeful. Ebner set a $2 million bond for Fuentes, who's being held in the Franklin County Jail. Criminal charges and testimony from Columbus detective further confirm the disturbing story that's become a key flashpoint. Let me see if I got this straight here. So Fuentes was arrested following a complaint by her mother on June 22nd. So in other words, he wasn't arrested until yesterday when people started questioning the 10-year-old pregnant girl trying to travel outside of Ohio to get an abortion. And people started questioning it. And suddenly the guy got arrested. What would have happened if President Biden hadn't said anything? And how could they possibly not know? How could they possibly not know that this guy was undocumented after he's been arraigned in court on a Class 1 felony? You're listening to The Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. Thanks for being here with us today. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I want to thank you very much for joining us today. We're giving you the news. We give you analysis for fact. We report the facts, the difference between news and fact. Then I make commentary. It's only my opinion. My opinion is not news. It's just my opinion. Just as valuable as yours. Call us and share yours, by the way. You can do so at 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Then what we can do is we can have a conversation regarding that. You can also chat with us. We are on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. Find us, be a part of this broadcast every single day, and I sincerely appreciate the fact that you're here today. President Joe Biden is beginning his first presidential trip to the Middle East today. The emphasis of the trip will be security. This from USA Today. The United States has long had an outsized commitment to Israel. What an interesting choice of words. President Biden's relationship with the Middle Eastern nation has been strained by his attempts to restart a 2015 deal with Iran that was meant to curb its nuclear activities, so says the happy language. I believe it was meant to facilitate it. That's just my opinion. The U.S. and Israel are expected to announce a Jerusalem declaration committing both countries to, quote, use all elements of their national power against the Iranian nuclear threat, unquote. President Biden will continue to make the case that diplomacy is, quote, the best way to reach what is a shared goal of ensuring that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, unquote. This is according to Jake Sullivan, President Biden's national security advisor. In addition, President Biden will look for ways to expand defense cooperation in the region, flying directly from Israel to Saudi Arabia. Biden hopes to advance Israel's desire to establish diplomatic relationships with the Saudi kingdom, which could help Middle East countries unite against Iran. Israel has already formalized relationships with the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. And how did that happen? And under whose administration did that happen? Why, it was President Trump's administration. Well, how come that's not in the article? Well, because it's USA Today. The latest, President Biden is, and this is true, a longtime supporter of Israel. This is his first presidential visit to the Middle East. Since taking office last year, he's been dealing with other priorities, specifically Russia and China. President Biden is looking to restart relations with the Palestinians after years of estrangement under the Trump administration. Biden said he will discuss his support for creation of an independent Palestinian nation alongside Israel, quote, even though I know it's not in the near term, unquote. Only because of the Palestinians, Israel has offered the Palestinians a homeland of their own 4 separate times. 4. Biden could play a key role in brokering the start of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. That would be huge. He is arriving in Israel as he prepares for a 5th election as Israel prepares for a 5th election in 3 years after the recent collapse of a coalition government. Biden and the Israelis are likely to focus on the areas where they agree, particularly security cooperation, and try to avoid inflaming sides where they don't. That was USA Today. Here's the Fox News coverage, which will be biased a little bit differently. President Joe Biden is looking to score a much-needed win in his visit to the Middle East this week, as his presidency has been tattered domestically with recent losses before the Supreme Court, inflation, recession fears, and rock-bottom approval ratings. Globally, the president is facing an energy crisis and the Russia-Ukraine war. He may have a golden opportunity to, according to Fox News, the Iran nuclear deal. Biden gets a chance to revive the deal, but first he has to convince uneasy Israel and Saudi Arabian officials that he and his administration will be effective in preventing Iran from becoming a nuclear power. I don't see that that's possible. I just don't. Biden will start his trip today when he lands in Israel, beginning a 3-day visit to the country. Discussions about the Iran nuclear deal are expected to be at the centerfold of meetings he has with Israeli officials. During his stay in Israel, Biden is expected to learn more about the country's new Iron Beam missile defense system. You've heard about Iron Dome. This is a new one. He will also visit with Yad Vashem, the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial, and will receive Israel's Presidential Medal of Honor. The president is expected to join Israeli leaders in issuing a Jerusalem declaration that will condemn Iran's nuclear power program, his nuclear program, and its ambition to weaponize that nuclear power. I want to say something here. This is important. That Jerusalem declaration would easily be a crowning achievement in anybody's presidential administration. Anyone's. And most certainly Joe Biden's. If he's able to pull this off, if they're actually going to sign, and that's probably already done, that would be a great day for Israel, the United States, even Iran, even though they absolutely deny it. Iran is looking to destroy itself. And in that destruction lies their nuclear power, their nuclear weapons program. If they come up with a nuclear weapon, Israel will act. As a matter of fact, they're updating their attack plans against Iran's nuclear weapons program as we speak. Iran does not have a future as a nuclear power. Israel will see to that. And they must. Because the Iranian government policy has been to eradicate the state of Israel. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with the idea that Israel would take out Iran under those circumstances. There's nothing wrong with it, except, of course, that it would start a nuclear war. There simply must be some sanity here, but that Jerusalem declaration would be a foreign policy jewel in President Biden's administration. And I wish him luck, and I certainly hope he signs it, and I certainly hope he means it when he signs it. Will this complicate the dealings with Iran? Yes. I don't care, and neither should you, in my humble opinion. Iran is spoiling to end its existence. This is what happens when you say the wrong thing over and over and over. That's happening. So the trip comes on the heels of the Biden administration in negotiators failing to score any concessions from Iran during their meeting in Qatar last month. Biden will then travel to Saudi Arabia, the first landing in the port city of Jeddah, to meet with King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Somebody he called a pariah. He's going to meet with them. So Saudi Arabia has remained frustrated that President Biden clings to the hope that a revived Iranian deal and a U.S.-Saudi relationship has become strained since all of that. President Biden said he would make the country a pariah due to their human rights violations. The president's relationship with Mohammed bin Salman has been particularly strained, and you can see why. You can see why. So Saudi Arabia is not happy about the Iran deal. Israel is not happy about the Iran deal. The Jerusalem Declaration will be helpful. But if indeed Iran comes up with a nuclear weapon, Saudi Arabia will purchase one. Israel already has them. It is essential that Saudi Arabia and Israel establish diplomatic relations. It's essential because Iran is the problem. Iran is apparently serious. If they are serious, then they will suffer mightily. Like I said, it would be the end of their existence. I have talked about this for years. I've been incredibly worried about it for years. I mean, incredibly worried about it. I've talked at length about the fact that Iran has driven itself to its own ruin, a nuclear one at that, by virtue of the fact that they will eradicate Israel at their first opportunity. It is most probable that Iran is developing a nuclear weapon for that exact enterprise. They've made it abundantly clear. They have used every weapon at their disposal against Israel at some point or another. Every single one. If they have a nuclear weapon, that will be the next one they use. Israel cannot afford that level of anti-Jewish bigotry armed with nuclear weapons to exist. And while I hope that there will indeed be some form of way to stop Iran from doing this through diplomacy, I certainly hope so. I just don't see it. I just don't see it happening. Israel working on their attack plans. I mean, it's a very short list of things they can do. One of the things strategically, people keep talking about, well, you know, if Iran gets a nuclear weapon and Israel has nuclear weapons, then it would be very much like the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. The problem with it is that during the Cold War between the Soviets and the United States, there were many, many items on the checklist that you had to go through before you were actually dealing with the use of nuclear weapons. Both the Soviet Union and the United States could move military assets around. They could publicize military alerts. They could do all manner of things. They could do all manner of things to make this happen before they got to the point where they were actually launching nuclear weapons. Israel doesn't have that. They don't have power that they can project. They don't have ways of warning the Soviet Union. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, John Kennedy established what was, for all intents and purposes, a blockade, but a blockade is an act of war. When the Russians were bringing nuclear-armed missiles to Cuba. So we called it a quarantine. That's one of those checklist items. Again, Israel doesn't have that. There were days when the world was poised on what was described as the nuclear brink. You can do a lot of things in days. Also, when it comes right down to it, both of those nations had a lot to lose. Iran, according to its government, is committed to the destruction of the state of Israel. That is their sole purpose. There is no room for moderation. Even if Iran was able to come up with a deliverable nuclear weapon and fire it at Israel, it would never touch Israel's soil. In the meantime, Israel, arguably possessors of the most refined thermonuclear weapons in the world, far beyond the United States inventory. Don't make any mistake. The United States thermonuclear inventory, H-bombs, well, they're just fine. They'll work. But the people who worked on the American thermonuclear program were all Jewish scientists, and they all ended up in Israel, and they've been working since then. All of this is something that gives me nightmares. It literally does. I remember I talked about this once, and somebody that was working with me, the world's greatest radio producer, Vicky Stifer, actually burst into tears because she knew I was right. So the Jerusalem Declaration, if it is a real declaration, will be good for all concerned, including Iran. They need to abandon their nuclear weapons program immediately. They need to do it. If the Jerusalem Declaration makes that happen, then I'm going to write a letter myself to the Nobel Prize Committee and nominate Joe Biden for making it happen. I just don't think it will. Not because of Joe Biden, but because of Iran. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. Feel free to give us a call. We'd love to have you. No, wait. There's somebody calling. Let's see who this is. Welcome to the Wells Report. How may I help you?
Hello, Mr. John David Wells.
Who is this?
This is Miss Kelly Lyons.
Ms. Kelly Lyons calling from Norman, Oklahoma.
Close enough.
It's not Norman?
Close enough. No, I'm not Norman. I'm Moore, but like 6 miles north. Come on, you're close enough.
Okay, come on. I mean, really. I mean, it's close enough for anybody graduating
Hey,
from...
you lived here. You know there's a difference.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, but that's close enough for anybody graduating from OU.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't graduate from OU, but yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Hey, can you take my call?
Yes. As a matter of fact, you're on the air right now.
Well, I'm just, I mean, all right. I can't sit idly by and not say anything because this, you know why this bothers me, right? This story about the 10-year-old girl.
Well, go ahead and share for people that don't know if you feel comfortable enough.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about any woman would be just tore up about the fact that anyone raped a 10-year-old girl and then impregnated her. But when it's an undocumented person coming in this country that has a felon, it just makes it that much harder to accept. And you know that I'm a Democrat. I've been one all of my life, and I've stood up for my party many, many times, but not anymore. I'm just so fed up with them. I'm waiting for them to tell me, by the way, how I should feel and think about this story, because they will tell me how I should feel and think. But this administration should take some of the blame because they have open borders. They don't care. They don't care about who's coming in. They think they're going to get votes from these people. So it's just infuriating. So Biden and his administration should take some of the responsibility of what happened to this poor little 10-year-old girl.
Yeah, it's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. And he was charged with rape. Well, what about pedophilia? There's a whole chain. There's a whole chain of charges that should have been leveled against him. And oh, by the way, what about his arrest? I mean, the complaint came in on June 22nd. He wasn't arrested until yesterday. He wasn't arrested until the assertions of President Biden were called into question by members of the media. And then suddenly this guy's arrested.
I wonder what the parents have been trying to do. I mean, I don't know what the backstory is to that. If on something like that, and you feel for this child. It's a baby. It's a baby.
My goodness.
10 years old is still a baby. And I just don't know. I just think there has to be something done. There's a special place in hell for this man. And hopefully he'll go there soon. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I understand. Kelly, thanks very much for joining us. I appreciate it. Bye-bye. Yeah, those are strong feelings. And when you are in a situation where even law enforcement is political, and it is at the federal level. I don't know about Akron, Ohio. All I can say is that when that becomes political, then you're in a situation where Katie barred the door. You're starting to talk about societal damage. This guy was arraigned for raping a 10-year-old twice. He admitted it. He was arraigned, and somehow USA Today could not develop the information as to whether or not he was a documented immigrant or an undocumented one. I'm sure that the court knows. And why in heaven's name would they not immediately announce that fact? Obviously, when it comes, and that's USA Today copy, obviously, USA Today does not want to know whether he's undocumented or not because of the same things that Kelly just said. Because this open border policy is letting monsters in. And that's what this guy apparently is, although he's gone ahead and admitted it. So why not say, yeah? Why not believe him? I think that's probably the wisest idea. So these things that we deal with on a regular basis absolutely must change. The left is not going to change itself. All you can do with the left is take it out of power. I'm calling on real Democrats to do exactly that. I'm calling on all voters in the United States, regardless of party, to reevaluate every vote they make, every single one, whether it's from school board to justice of the peace to district attorney to whatever it is. There are no down ballot issues. Elect your neighbors. Please do. You are listening to the Wells Report. Thanks very much for being here today. Back with more, a third hour next. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news. We analyze the news for fact. I will draw contrasts between fact and news. I will also point out bias, and it's everywhere in the mainstream media. From there, I will make commentary. That's my opinion. It is not the news. I differentiate between news reporting and opinion. I do, however, reserve the right to observe bias and comment on it. And I also reserve the right to point out factual errors in America's journalism, which I have done. That is not opinion. That is simple observation. Then there's commentary, and that commentary is balanced with your debate. Two ways to do it. You can join the chat room. We are broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. You can join us as you see fit, and we hope you do. A while back, there was an horrific shooting right down the road, which is a Texas term. Texas is huge. There's no such thing as anything being right down the road. It's many, many, many miles south. It's a place called Uvalde. And they have released videotapes that are damaging to everybody who watches them. Everyone. Before we get to that, however, I'm going to report on that in just a couple of seconds, but there is news you need to be aware of. The January 6th committee, a political and decidedly one-sided affair, in my opinion, has brought up this in some of their testimony. President Donald Trump, according to this Reuters article, called a witness who had yet to appear before a congressional committee investigating the 2021 U.S. Capitol attack. This, according to Representative Liz Cheney. She's the co-chair of that committee. She is a Republican. She raised concerns the former president might be illegally trying to influence witness testimony. Speaking at the end of a 3-hour-long hearing, Cheney, one of two members from the Republican Party on the 9-member panel, announced that it had referred the matter to the U.S. Justice Department. In case you're wondering, the witness did not pick up Trump's call, but did tell their lawyer about it. Their lawyer alerted us. This committee has supplied that information to the Department of Justice. Let me say one more time, we will take any efforts to influence witness testimony very seriously. I do have to point out on this particular moment, by the way, that call occurred after the committee's last hearing on June 28th. The Justice Department has declined to make comment on whether or not President Trump may have tried to intimidate a witness. There are a couple of things you have to do. You just have to know. Testimony has been cherry-picked all through this January 6th committee. It's one of the things that I sincerely wish they had not done. I sincerely wish they had invited real opposition. Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney are Republicans in name only, in my opinion, and they are decidedly anti-Trump. That being the case, this committee has damaged itself possibly beyond repair. But apparently this call was made. That is worthy of reportage. That being said, witnesses have been coached by Adam Schiff. They have been interviewed, some on camera, some not. They have been groomed by lawyers to say things that keep them away from perjury. And as we have noted in the past, there is a great deal of trying to straddle the line between a legal proceeding and a political one. In this particular circumstance, They're trying to, as they have done with the testimony, all the testimony, cherry pick what they wish from whatever set of circumstances they're dealing with. And that is the case here. They will say that Donald Trump is trying to tamper with witnesses when they themselves have tampered with witnesses. If Donald Trump made this call, and apparently he did, although we don't know because the person receiving the call didn't actually take the call. But it is certainly worthy to report this. And so I have. I want to make sure that you understand that witness tampering is a serious thing. But you also have to understand that there was no witness tampering because there was no communication. The Justice Department can't do anything with that. They can't. So I wanted to make sure that I was planning on doing that last hour, but I ran out of time. Uvalde. Tony Plohetsky has written this, and the editorial, this is from the Austin American-Statesman, by the way, as reprinted by USA Today. USA Today's editors say this: our goal is to bring to light what happened at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas. The video footage, audio, and events described in this story are disturbing. This exclusive story from USA Today and video are being made available free of charge as a public service. If you value strong journalism from USA Today, support us by subscribing. Here is the copy. And once again, this is by Tony Plohetsky of the Austin American-Statesman. The gunman walks into Robb Elementary School unimpeded. Moments after spraying bullets from his semi-automatic rifle outside the school, and after desperate calls to 911 from inside and outside the school. He slows down to peek around a corner in a hallway, flips back his hair before proceeding toward classrooms 111 and 112. Seconds later, a boy with neatly combed hair and glasses exits a bathroom to head back to his class. As he turns the corner, he notices the gunman. He is standing by the classroom door and unloads a barrage. The boy turns and runs back into the bathroom. The gunman enters one of the classrooms. Children scream. The gunfire continues, stops, then starts again, stops, then starts again, and again, and again. It's almost 3 minutes before 3 police officers arrive in the hallway and rush toward the classrooms, crouching down. Then a burst of gunfire. One officer grabs the back of his head. They quickly retreat to the end of the hallway, below a school surveillance camera. A 77-minute video recording captured from this vantage point, along with body camera footage from one of the responding officers, shows in excruciating detail what happened when dozens of local, state, and federal officers entered the school, heavily armed, clad in body armor, helmets, protective shields. This video was obtained exclusively by the Austin American-Statesman, part of the USA Today network, and TV stations KVUE. USA Today published an edited version of the video to show how law enforcement did their jobs, or in some cases did not. In the video, officers walk back and forth in the hallway, some leaving the camera frame, then reappearing, others training their weapons toward the classroom, talking, making cell phone calls, sending texts, or looking at floor plans. None enters or attempts to enter the classrooms. Even after hearing at least 4 shots from the classrooms 45 minutes after police arrived, they waited. They asked for keys to one of the classrooms. We would find out later it was unlocked. Investigators would say later, they brought tear gas and gas masks. They carried a sledgehammer, and still they waited. The officers rushed into the classroom and killed the gunman 1 hour and 14 minutes after police arrived. 19 fourth graders and 2 teachers died in the massacre. The video tells in real time the brutal story of how heavily armed officers failed to immediately launch a cohesive and aggressive response to stop the shooter and save more children if possible. It reinforces the trauma of the parents, friends, and bystanders who were outside the school and pled with police to do something. And for the survivors who quietly called 911 from inside their classrooms, begging for help. Texas Department of Public Safety Director Steve McCraw said the person he identified as the incident commander, School District Police Chief Pete Arredondo, treated the situation as a barricaded subject, which calls for a slower, methodical response, not an active shooter situation when police are charged with doing anything possible to stop a gunman, including putting their own lives on the line. That was a mistake. Officers should have confronted the gunman as soon as they arrived, carrying enough firepower to breach the classroom and stop the shooting. This, according to Texas Department of Public Safety Director Steve McCraw. McCraw singled out Arredondo for blame in restraining officers from going in earlier. The video shows multiple responding agencies on the scene, including officers from the Uvalde Police Department, the Uvalde County Sheriff's Department, the Texas Department of Public Safety, the Texas Rangers, the U.S. Border Patrol, and the U.S. Marshal's Office. The video file obtained by the Statesman, part of the investigative file, includes security footage from a nearby funeral home showing the gunman arrive at the school by wrecking a pickup truck into the ditch, as well as 911 call audio and officers speaking in the hallway. At 12:21 p.m., 45 minutes after police arrived at the scene, 4 shots are heard. At least a dozen officers move toward the classroom. An officer says they're making entry, yet they do not. At 12:30, an officer wearing a helmet and ballistic vest squirts hand sanitizer from a wall-mounted dispenser and rubs his hands together. Armed officers walk back and forth, discuss the classroom doors and windows. The hunt for the keys continue. One officer brings a sledgehammer, and audio from the surveillance camera at times is garbled but is loud in the crowded hallway. At 12:41, a man wearing blue rubber gloves and a black shirt, khaki pants, and a thick black baseball cap with a stethoscope around his neck arrives and speaks to the officers. Other paramedics arrive with supplies. 2 officers in camouflage fist bump each other. At 12:50, a cadre of officers crouches outside the classroom. After a burst of gunfire, the video ends. Authorities and a Border Patrol officer killed the gunman. Investigators wait the results of an analysis from an Austin-based medical expert on how many victims died after the police arrived. Sadly, there is more to this story. I will report it when we return. The horrific tragedy of the Uvalde school shooter at Robb Elementary School. And what didn't happen to stop him. More about this comes up in a second. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back in just a second. This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. We are talking about the news story surrounding the release of video from inside Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. It shows police doing nothing for way too long. There's plenty of blame to go around. There were an awful lot of police agencies there. Eventually, a border patrolman, and the law enforcement officers ended the event. A lot of kids that had parents in the Border Patrol were lost that day. The children of Border Patrol agents. And why this unfolded is anyone's guess. In the chat room, Ann says Uvalde was horrific. 17 children killed, 2 teachers killed with a gun. The response, take away all guns. 53 illegal immigrants killed in the back of an 18-wheeler. The response is nothing. Nobody's talking about taking away 18-wheelers. Thank you for your point, Ann. I appreciate it. Fox News reports as follows. Portions of the surveillance footage of the Robb Elementary School shooting were published by the Austin American Statesman and KVUE. This was yesterday, ahead of a planned release by officials over the weekend. The footage shows the gunman, whose authorities identified as 18-year-old Salvador Ramos, firing multiple shots from an AR-15 style rifle outside the school, then entering the building at 11:33 a.m. and shooting his way into adjoining classrooms. A barrage of more than 100 bullets were fired inside those 2 classrooms over the next 2.5 minutes before 7 officers ran into the school at 11:36, 2 armed with rifles, 4 with handguns. Officers were on the scene before the gunman entered the school. Listen carefully. Officers were on the scene before the gunman entered the school as one officer had the suspect in his rifle sights and asked for permission to shoot. The incident commander either didn't hear the request or did not respond in time, allowing the suspect to enter the school. This, according to a report released by the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Center. It could have all been over outside the school had a supervisor been listening to his radio. This is one of the things that I have trained for, and so on. It is not cut and dried. It is excruciatingly condemning. But under circumstances like this, decisions are made, both good and bad. The adage that all's well that ends well covers up an awful lot of these bad decisions. This did not end well. 3 police officers went in immediately hearing gunfire, and they stopped. Another chance. I hate Monday morning quarterbacking. I hate spending hours and days and weeks considering decisions made in particles of seconds. But my job is to not parse through that. My job is to report the news. I have done so. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. Thanks for being here today. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. I make commentary which is not the news. I differentiate between news reporting and opinion. And then, as a check and balance on my commentary, there's debate. You are welcome to do so. 817-379-2172. You can also chat with us. And we are most assuredly looking at all the chats that we receive, and we comment on many of them. The other day, there was a hearing in the United States Senate. Josh Hawley was talking about all manner of things having to do with this culture war about American gender, whether men can be women and women can be men, and how the left is seemingly doing their absolute dead level best to blur the lines between reality and political fancy. I don't know how else to say it. This is how that conversation went.
Before I want to visit with you, Ms. Meskey, but before I do, I just want to clear one thing up. Professor Bridges, you said several times, you've used a phrase, I want to make sure I understand what you mean by it. You've referred to people with a capacity for pregnancy. Would that be women?
Many women, cis women, have the capacity for pregnancy. Many cis women do not have the capacity for pregnancy. There are also trans men who are capable of pregnancy, as well as non-binary people who are capable of pregnancy.
So this isn't really a women's rights issue.
We can recognize that this impacts women while also recognizing that it impacts other groups. Those things are not mutually exclusive, Senator Hawley.
Oh, so your view is that the core of this right then is about what?
So I want to recognize that your line of questioning is transphobic, and it opens up trans people to violence by not recognizing that.
Wow, you're saying that I'm opening up people to violence by asking whether or not women are the folks who can have pregnancies?
So I want to note that 1 out of 5 transgender persons have attempted suicide. So I think it's important
because of my line of questioning?
Because
so we can't talk about it?
Because denying that trans people exist and pretending not to know that they exist.
I'm denying that trans people exist by asking you if you're talking about women having pregnancies?
Do you believe that men can get pregnant?
No, I don't think women can get
So you are
pregnant.
denying that trans people exist?
And that leads to violence? Is this how you run your classroom? Are students allowed to question you?
Absolutely.
Or are they also treated like this? Where
No,
they're told that they're opening up people to violence?
We have a good time in my class. You should join.
I bet.
You might learn a lot.
Wow, I would learn a lot. I've learned a lot just in this exchange.
Absolutely.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, and so it is extraordinary. Kiara Bridges, testifying as an expert in race and reproductive rights, called out the Missouri Republican senator's line of questioning as being transphobic. This happened during a Senate Judiciary Committee about the abortion restrictions case, Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, which prompted the Supreme Court's decision regarding Roe v. Wade. In the exchange, you heard Hawley first ask Bridges by asking for her clarification if she was referring to women when she said people with a capacity for pregnancy. Seriously. Bridges then responded by noting to Hawley, many women, cis women, which I guess are genetically women-gendered people, have the capacity for pregnancy. Many cis women do not have the capacity for pregnancy. There are also trans men who are capable of pregnancy, as well as non-binary people who are also capable of pregnancy. Then Senator Hawley responded, as you heard, and then she asked Bridges in this particular context if abortion was a woman's rights issue. So we find ourselves in this leftist crazy world. There are women and there are men. If a so-called man can give birth, he is not a man. He is a woman. That is all. To say otherwise is Looneyville, in my particular opinion. And apparently the same opinion held by Josh Hawley. And so, when we find ourselves into crazy world, again, my opinion, we have to look at this. We have to look at this and say, just exactly what is the agenda here? Near as I can tell, the agenda is to make everybody the same, whether they are or not. To allow that there are women who are not women. They're actually men. And to allow that there are men who are not men, but they are actually women. All of this has to do with a very small number of people. A very small number of people that we're discussing here. She points out that 1 in 5 transgender people have attempted suicide. I'm sure that many of them have been successful in that attempt. All I can say is that, once again, I suppose that if you started your day by finding yourself somehow inadequate to what your brain tells you about you, that could become emotionally destructive. And I would say that most suicides are indeed based on that emotional destruction or emotional destruction of that nature. And so Bridges went on to say, we can recognize this impacts women while also recognize that it impacts other groups. Those things are not mutually exclusive. That is a statement from someone who is checked out of what is real and what is not real for political reasons and nothing more. These people, I'm reasonably sure that these people would also be a lot less suicidal if they were in a situation where they weren't being egged on by these same leftists and by a leftist media that does their dead level best to enable, empower, even create gender dysphoria, which is the scientific term for what we're dealing with here. This, by the way, all of these next reports are under the heading leftism. Oberlin College in Ohio has now racked up $4 million in interest after not paying a $30 million libel damage found against them because of their comments regarding a local family-run bakery. The college alleged false racism, or alleged racism that was proven false. Gibson's Bakery was awarded $31.6 million in July of 2019 after a student and a college official were found guilty of libeling the establishment as racist following an altercation of a store employee that had an interaction with 3 black students. The judgment is now $36 million after the school accumulated $4,300 daily interest over more than 1,000 days it went unpaid. The damages stem from false racism allegations that were promoted by a former dean at the school, Alan Gibson, the son and grandson of Gibson's Bakery and Food Mart owners David Gibson and Alan Gibson, chased down and tackled a black Oberlin student in 2016 who was suspected of stealing bottles of wine. 2 other black students at Oberlin College who were friends of the suspect also became involved in the physical altercation, prompting the accusations of racial profiling. All 3 students were arrested according to court documents, ultimately pled guilty to misdemeanor charges, and read statements claiming that Gibson's actions were not racially motivated. The shoplifting altercation, which occurred one day after former President Donald Trump was elected president, sparked widespread condemnation from Oberlin students and claims that the Gibson family racially targeted the students. Gibson's Bakery filed a lawsuit against Oberlin College in 2017, claiming they were libeled and their business was hurt. Students boycotted the bakery and protested outside, while the school stopped buying food from the bakery. The Oberlin College Student Senate additionally passed a resolution accusing the bakery owners of being racist, which was emailed to the school community, according to Fox News. Oberlin College Vice President and Dean of Students, Meredith Raimondo, also handed out flyers stating the bakery is a racist establishment with a long account of racial profiling and discrimination. College resources were used to print the flyers and buy food and other supplies for the protesters. This according to court documents. A jury ultimately found the school and Raimondo guilty of libel. The jury also found the college guilty of intentionally inflicting emotional distress on the owner, David Gibson, who has since died, as well as intentionally inflicting emotional distress on his son. The jury originally awarded the bakery $44 million. But Lorain County Common Pleas Judge John Maraldi later lowered the damages to $25 million. In 2019, the court ordered Oberlin to pay an additional $6.5 million to the bakery to reimburse legal fees. Now the Gibson family is demanding that Oberlin pay the full $36 million, which includes roughly $4 million in interest, after Oberlin College asked the Ohio Supreme Court to issue an order halting the payment. Attorneys for the bakery filed documents with the Ohio Supreme Court in late June opposing Oberlin's request to halt the payment. The Gibsons have correctly completed every step necessary to properly execute a jury award and Judge Maraldi's 2019 judgment, the lawyers wrote in a motion last month. It is unclear when the state's highest court might hear the arguments, according to the outlet. Gibson's Bakery did not immediately respond to Fox News. When approached for comment, a representative for Oberlin College directed Fox News Digital to a web page on the school's site concerning updates on the case. The most recent update on the page is the school announcing June 1st that it filed an appeal with the Ohio Supreme Court and had the support of organizations such as the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, the NAACP, and Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press. So once again, what we have here is in the case of Senator Hawley and this Berkeley College professor, outright slander and libel against the senator. And now we have actual legally found libel against Oberlin College, all because leftist craziness, in my view, leftist craziness on the part of this college. And then there's this. You might have heard the story of a pregnant Texas woman who was pulled over for driving alone in the high occupancy vehicle lane, the HOV lane meant for cars carrying at least two persons. It has turned the state's strict anti-abortion law on its head, claiming to police, she has done this, by claiming to police who stopped her in Dallas that she had a passenger in the car, her fetus. This, by the way, is from CNN. Most of us would say, since she was pregnant, a baby, but apparently, well, this is a fetus, according to CNN. Brandy Batone got a ticket anyway, according to the Dallas Morning News, which first reported the interaction. Batone told the officer there was another person in the car, her baby girl, due in early August. So, pardon my shaky math, but that appears to be a baby in the third trimester. In recalling the argument she made to police during the encounter, she told CNN, and I'm not trying to make a huge political stance here, but do you understand that this is a baby? It seems that Texas's strict anti-abortion law, which defines an unborn child as an individual living member of the Homo sapiens species, only applies when it can be used against women, not when it can help them get out of a traffic ticket. That's once again CNN copy. Batone told CNN that her own views on the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade aren't really why I made the stance that I did. And in this particular opinion piece by Jill Filipovich, What she says is that people who are standing for the rights of a pregnant woman to claim her baby as a passenger in her car should stop cheering for this point of view. Why? Well, because it damages the idea that a person isn't a person until they're sitting in a child safety seat, I suppose. Which means there's some alternative to ending the pregnancy? Is that what we're saying here, CNN? Yeah, this is why CNN's ratings are in the trash, because of leftist craziness. Again, just my opinion. There's more. It's next. I'll share it with you as we continue on the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. There's another story, this on Fox News, that I think you need to be aware of. Raising kids who value life at every age and stage can be possible today in a confusing world as long as there's time and intentionality within the home, according to those who are active in the pro-life arena. Bethany Baumberger, co-founder and executive director of the Radiance Foundation, a faith-based educational 501c3 nonprofit headquartered outside Washington, D.C., believes in the importance of creating a family that celebrates life. She told Fox News in an interview that she hopes Pro-Life Kids, her new book geared toward children in kindergarten through sixth grade, can be a catalyst for a lot of adults who think it's too hard to talk about hard things. We live in a culture that is screaming lies at our children, her words, about what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man, and what it means to value other human beings. So if we don't teach our children, there's a broken world that will reach them. Bomberger is a mother of four. She was a teacher for many years in public and in Christian schools. Was inside the classroom, she said that she learned the power of literature and that kids need adults to delve into really hard issues age appropriately. Now, I'm not bringing this up to promote pro-life. I'm not bringing this up to grind an axe about the culture wars in these United States. I'm bringing it up to point out that in this particular day and time, we find ourselves in a situation where people who go along with the leftist craziness are pretty much left alone. Those people that do not, are vilified to the fullest extent that the left can throw at them when something crosses their paths they disagree with. So this is a news article from a major news organization about raising pro-life kids in a pro-choice culture in America. Well, in this particular circumstance, you can say typically that there's about a 50-50 difference. A 50-50 difference between people who are pro-life and people pro-life and people who are pro-abortion, because that's what pro-choice is. Once again, they know they're doing something wrong because they are couching the terms they use to defend themselves. Pro-choice. No, it's pro-abortion. And it should be spoken of as such, again, in my opinion. But what I'm pointing out to you is this news article. This news article is, okay, on a granted right-wing biased news website. But there is one article. Articles number in the tens or even more every single day about the pro-abortion stance in this nation and how egregious it was that the Supreme Court decided to turn aside what was an unconstitutional ruling by a court in 1973 that is charged with interpreting the Constitution, not amending it as they see fit. In point of fact, the 73 decision did not amend anything. But there was a cobbled up right somehow that is not present in the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't say anything about the Supreme Court being able to enact constitutional amendments based on their decisions. That court should have never trod into those dangerous waters to begin with. In point of fact, this particular version of the Supreme Court did not tread into those waters. What they did was point out that the court cannot do what the court was essentially trying to do and then was sustained by popular culture, the mainstream media, and all the rest. They were not discussing the idea that abortion is either legal or not legal, should be legal or not be legal. But they were saying that this was a badly chosen decision, and they corrected it. There are countless articles describing the outrage, and one that I have found in the intervening piece of time that actually points out there's another point of view. Sometimes people vilify others based on disagreements. And sometimes people vilify others simply by ignoring them. That's what's happening here. On the Wells Report, we do something different. We give voice to those people who are ignored. We also give voice to those people who aren't ignored. And then we point out what I just did, is that if your politics are correct, then you will not be ignored. If your politics disagree with those, then you will be. Think about that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching The Wells Report. See you tomorrow. All right. Okay. I'm going to move on here. For those people involved in the argument, I am not ignoring Kelly's comments. I am going to stick to my guns that I can tell the difference between provocation, a response to provocation, and those who start the mess in the first place. And I don't believe you can. I also have to point out that Kelly said this. John David, I'm to blame for part of this because I asked Isaac specifically about how he felt about a story. He took that as being called out because, as I have seen, Isaac is very, very quick to respond to anyone who doubts his opinions or his ideas or what have you. He took that as calling him out, which I truly wasn't. I wanted to see what he thought of the administration's lack of protection of our own citizens from monsters such as this, discussing the man who raped a 10-year-old twice. I should not have said anything too close to home for me. Well, that's not the case. The argument that raged while I was trying to do something else and was indeed distracted by is something that I need to figure out how to stop. There are antagonists and protagonists. In this particular case, all I can do is fall back on my editorial beliefs and ideologies regarding this show. And I will say the following. When you pick a fight with someone, occasionally you find someone that's willing to fight back. I can tell the difference between someone who picks the fight and someone who engages in it. And I will usually come down on the side of the antagonist. I'm going to say this for the record. I'm going to say this for everybody listening and watching. If you are taking part in a conversation on a Wells Report chat room, a chat room of the Wells Report, you will handle yourself well. And you will not take the better part of an hour pushing someone into, okay, what you described as a profane response. You're not going to then complain about the profane response. I want you to have your say. I want you to stop arguing. If you don't do it, like I said to Isaac moments ago, if you indeed refuse to moderate yourself, I will moderate it for you because these are my chat rooms. If Isaac, you should have a show of your own. I hope you do someday. As a matter of fact, if you were to do all the things that I'm doing here, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars being able to do it. If you choose to do that and you put up an Isaac report, I will promote it for you. I will send everyone who feels the way you do to your broadcast. I'll be more than happy to do it. I'll help you out. I'll help you find the equipment. I'll do everything I can to make that an easy opportunity. Okay? I did discuss Kelly's comment. And again, you're not listening. It seems to me that if you spent more time listening and less time barking, I suppose what would end up happening is that you might not bark as much. And so, Isaac, I made it plain. Moderate yourself, or I'll do it. Okay? Stop picking fights with people and then complaining about when they fire a punch back at you. Stop it. We took you out of this last time. I'll do it again, and I'll continually do it again. Not because of your well-reasoned political ideologies, but because the guy at the center of all of this is you. And Langston buys in, and occasionally Alan comes into this as well, but at least I'm able to get through to Alan. Isaac, you disagree with everything I say. Nearly. And you need to stop it. I will follow my policy. And so will you. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye, Isaac. Good luck. Do the Isaac report. Tell me when you do it. I'll help you. Okay? Good luck to you. Sorry, we're going to miss you when you're being Isaac. When you're being the leftist argumentative guy that picks fights, I don't know what to tell you. We don't miss that guy. We miss Isaac the left. We miss Isaac the Democrat. But there are others. Kelly's a Democrat. She doesn't have this problem. Yeah, she was picked. Yeah, she ran over it. And I'm going to say one more thing. Let's say one more thing. And Langston, if Isaac doesn't hear this, you tell him. Okay? There's another difference between Kelly and Isaac. The difference is that Kelly apologized, didn't she? I read it to you just moments ago. Langston, profanity is not okay. Try it and you'll see how not okay it is. But tell Isaac that the difference is that Kelly apologized. Haven't heard a thing from Isaac. And oh, by the way, young man, I haven't heard an apology from you either. Truth spoken here. God bless all of you. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks very much for joining me today. I hope that